Evolutionary Org Hardcore 2.0 is coming your way. This is episode 161. Today we're going to do Sports TRT versus Bodybuilding TRT with Euro Pharma. So this is going to be a really good topic. We're going to talk about TRT 101, kind of go over. A lot of people have been asking about it. A lot of people know what it is already, but a lot of people don't know what it is as well. We had a guy on the forum the other day ask, "What is TRT?" Someone mentioned TRT, like, "What is TRT?" So a lot of maybe your friends and family are asking about it. So you can refer them to this podcast, or maybe you can learn a little more on this podcast to share with them. We're going to talk about Sports TRT 101. What is Sports TRT? We're going to focus on Sports TRT versus Bodybuilding TRT. So we're seeing this kind of come up lately. We're going to talk about the different dosing on it. We're going to talk about Euro Pharma test TRT options. And then we're going to talk about why Euro Pharma is trusted. But first, let me tell you guys something. You guys and gals out there, listen. We have a lot of people who listen to this podcast now. Each episode on the evolutionary.org forums and the family of forums, we are getting anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50 or 70,000 even views on these podcasts within the first 2 or 3 weeks that these get published. So a lot of you are listening to our podcast via the forum, but did you know that we're also on Apple? We're on Spotify as well. So we're on different social media platforms out there and different podcast platforms. So if you want this podcast to continue to grow and you want us to continue to put out these podcasts, and we're putting out a lot of podcasts every month. We're putting out at least 10, 15 podcasts every month. If you want to see that continue and you want to see us spread this knowledgeable information so people can use these products properly and really get on the right point, you've got to help us out. You've got to sub.
Yeah.
You've got to hit the like button. You got to comment. You got to give us a rating as well. Our ratings on these platforms are around 4. I've seen it on high 3s. I've seen it in the low 4s, even mid 4s. Got to give us a good rating so that we move up on the algorithms and we
Yep.
continue to spread the knowledge, because that's the point of this podcast. All right.
But I look at it this way, Steve. I was having a conversation with a gym buddy this morning, and funny enough, we talked about the fertility podcast. He's listened to half of it, and I said, listen to the second half and talked about the subjects that we've discussed. That's what we're doing. It's like talking to a gym buddy when you talk to us, but we try to keep it science based. We try to keep it factual. We're not sort of doing the bro science. We're not doing the gym bullshit kind of stuff. We're putting information out there that we think is timeless, it's invaluable, and I said I've described it on other shows as though we're like the wiki or is an encyclopedia with this kind of stuff. It should be that you could come back and listen to our shows at any time and find that the information is still relevant. If it stops being relevant, we do another show, we update. And obviously, we encourage you to look through our backlog, our library, see what we've done. And as Steve said, when you do like a show and you think it's great and you think a buddy can benefit from it, share, like, love, subscribe. That helps. You know how it works, and you'll be helping your gym buddies. You'll be helping people that you want to share the knowledge with. You listen to a show, you applied it, you found it worked, you pass that information over to your buddies, and you give us a recommendation that way. So let us know what you think, of course, as usual, at the end of the shows, in the comments and so on, Steve.
So let's talk about TRT 101. So what is TRT? Now TRT stands for testosterone replacement therapy. And it's something that's becoming more and more popular. I can remember probably about 10 years ago,
Yeah,
um, where I was dating this girl and she saw, some of my needles and stuff. And, I was like, I wasn't on TRT. I'm not on TRT yet, but at the time I just told her, I was like, oh, no, no, don't worry about the needles. I'm on TRT. I was taking
yeah,
Tren. I was
yeah,
taking all kinds of steroids. I was running
yeah.
steroid cycles at the time pretty heavily. And I told her, I was like, oh, don't worry, I'm on TRT. And she's like, oh, you know what? I dated a guy who was also on TRT, but he took the gel. So it's
Yeah.
something that we've seen more and more mainstream now. And now it's kind of like a thing where when you're, dating someone new and you tell them, yeah, oh, don't worry about those needles. Don't worry about those vials of steroids.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on TRT. Don't worry about it. And they're like, oh, yeah, I know about it already. So now it's become much more. And 10 years ago, it was a lot of prescriptions were given the gels. You're given something called Testone
Yeah,
or Androgel
yeah,
by
yeah, yeah.
doctors, and now we've kind of went to
Mess.
injectables more, and so it's kind of evolved. And now in America, you can even go to like a urinologist. You don't even have to go to an endo. You can go to a urologist. You can go to a regular doctor, or he can refer you to a specialist.
There's clinics, as you said, Steve, that have sprung up and
Yeah.
it's become commercialized. So
Yeah, now
I
there's a
actually,
clinic on
yeah,
every corner that's offering
mm,
TRT. So now, if you're willing to pay, which clinics
yes,
are very expensive because
yeah,
they have to pay the overhead. If you're willing to pay for TRT, you can get on TRT so easy now in America. And it's become almost too easy. They're even putting like 25-year-olds on TRT who don't even need TRT. So it's
yeah,
gotten way, way too easy to do it. It's not like it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So my point is, testosterone replacement therapy, if we're going to talk about it, the idea behind TRT has
yes,
always been to replace your
yes,
te- your testosterone that you would naturally produce in a normal state. And what
yeah,
happens is a lot of people don't have proper testosterone levels or they want
yeah.
higher testosterone levels. So they'll get put on TRT for that reason. So,
Let me jump in for a second here, Steve, and just talk about, as we have on other shows, where we talked about boosting your testosterone levels. Testosterone levels are, and this is can be well covered in the media as well, falling in terms of, and I said this on other shows, I repeat this now. Uh, Generationally, your great granddaddy had better testosterone levels than you. Your granddad had better testosterone levels than you, and even your daddy had better testosterone levels than you. And that's not just something that a TRT clinic or shows that talk about testosterone and steroids, etc., would like you to think. That's factual. That's literally data that you can go and look up. I believe some of the data is from 1930s, 1950s, definitely 1950s, Steve. When we said even in the Depression, during the war, when people were on limited amounts of food and so on and so forth in this country. Um, and for whatever reason, Steve and I have discussed this before. There's the obesity, which is an obvious one, and we'll touch upon that later in the show. There's the variety of medications that people take on a daily basis, prescription or otherwise, which can affect your testosterone levels. We've talked about stress affecting your testosterone levels, and we've talked about specifically pollution and background and toxins in the soils and stuff like this. And the reality of the situation is exactly as I've just described. Naturally, for the age when they were measured, and of course, age will also affect your testosterone levels. On a like for like basis, your 35-year-old great granddaddy's levels were better than yours are today. And that isn't just sort of, why? You'd imagine with modern medical science, Steve, and the gadgets that we have around us and access to food from across the world, you'd think that we're less stressed, less aggravated, less we're able to go to the gym. The listeners to this show, hopefully, for the most part, would be people that look to keep fit and get in shape. To go, they should have better testosterone levels than the man in the street. But typically speaking, on a like for like basis, and with all things being equal, because parameters will always shift height, weight, medical conditions, and so on. If you take two individuals, one from the 1950s and one from now, the 1950s will have better testosterone levels. And so we need to know what we're doing in and of ourselves, with our health, with our lifestyles, and so on, and food, and diet, and choices, and medication, and alcohol and drug abuse, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's become what I wrote down here, Steve, that people are just more comfortable with the idea of boosting, both for women with HRT and specifically postmenopausal women with HRT. That's always been, certainly in my generation, as a boomer, as Steve likes to call me. My mum took HRT in her late 40s, early 50s. So the idea of women having HRT was a thing that was perfectly fine in the 70s and 80s. But it's almost, as Steve said, in the last 10 years or so, we've started to become mainstream, comfortable. People that don't like steroids and don't like needles and don't like roid using bodybuilders and all that kind of vibe are okay with the idea of testosterone replacement or hormone replacement for men, if you like. Let's talk now, Steve, about actual typical ranges for testosterone in a normal healthy individual who's not using steroids.
yeah, and as I said in the last segment, the idea behind TRT is to replace what your body should normally produce in a setting which would get your numbers in line. So the proper testosterone range for men is going to be somewhere between 300 nanograms per deciliter to 900 nanograms per deciliter. So if you are listening to this and you've never tested your testosterone levels before, maybe you have, but you never really taken, a look at them, you can go and you can get your hormone levels checked. You can come on the forum and check out MX Signature. I have a link which explains how you can do it on your own without a doctor's visit, or you can go to your doctor if you have good insurance and get it through your doctor, and he'll write it up for you, and then refer you to a lab where you can go and get your blood drawn, and then you'll get results in a couple days. And it's really good to know your testosterone level, your total testosterone levels, to see where they're at and kind of keep track of them over time. Because what happens is as you get older, your testosterone levels will gradually drop. They usually peak somewhere in your 20s. Some of you, it's going to be in your early 20s. Some it's going to be mid 20s. Some even late 20s. Everybody's a little different. They don't peak as a teenager. That is a myth. Again, as Mobster said at the beginning, there's a lot of bro science out there that will say that. No, your testosterone levels start changing as a
It can feel
teenager.
like that, Steve.
Yeah. Well, that's not what
Yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
the hormonal changes.
Yes,
That's why
yes.
when a teenager, I used to wake up a lot of mornings
We
and
would. We would.
well, that, but also with pimples, and you get a lot of pimples popping up because your
Yeah,
hormones are changing, your testosterone, your estrogen all over the
yeah.
place. So what happens is as you get older, your testosterone levels reach a peak, and then they gradually will start dropping as we age, and that's just
Yes.
because of human evolution. That's just the way it is as we get older. So the idea is, look, if you get your testosterone levels checked and they're at 150 or that 250, and you're like, man,
Yeah.
I want to get them in line. So yeah, I'm going to go on TRT. So that's the idea. But on this podcast, we're not going to talk about basic TRT. We're going to talk about,
Not really, no. We're just giving you the 101, the stuff you need to know.
yeah, and we're going to talk about sports TRT versus bodybuilding TRT. So we
Yeah.
talked about normal TRT in other podcasts. So let's get into sports TRT. And this is something, as I talked about, the evolution of testosterone replacement therapy. I've seen in the past 5 years, especially in America, you go to an anti-aging clinic, and I've gone to one before. There was a anti-aging clinic in the shopping center that just opened up, and they put signs all over the place where it said 50% off cryotherapy, 50% off vitamins, 50% off TRT, and all this other shit. So I was like, let me go in there and check out what they got. Let me go
Yeah.
check out, let me try cryotherapy. I've never, used it before. Some people say it's bullshit. Some people say it's great. Let me go try this stuff out. So I walk in there. It's like walking into a fucking McDonald's. They have a big thing with all these prices. It's like a menu. It's like a restaurant. And I'm like, what the hell is this shit? And they make you fit all this information, and they try to sell you on all this shit. They're like, oh,
Cross sell, mate. It's like going to a dealership, Steve. They're
yeah,
cross selling. Get
yep.
this and get this as well.
Which is so unethical to walk into a medical facility and feel like you're
Yeah.
walking into a car dealership. But then
Yes.
I tried the cryotherapy. It's bullshit. Okay, it's bullshit. I'm sorry, guys. It's bullshit. I thought it was complete bullshit. Wasted like 50 or $60, and they're like, oh, let's sign you up. They start sending you spam emails. It's a business, and
Oh,
and and
God. Yeah.
it's so unethical. So what happens is, people go in there when they have low testosterone levels, and they get on these monthly plans, and they start being billed 2, 3, 500 a month, whatever, and they'll try to put you on more and more stuff because they need to pay for their location. They need to pay the hot blonde chick that works out front to
Yep.
greet you, and they always hire like these gorgeous women, of course, because they want
Yeah, 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 yeah,
they
yeah.
want the men to come in and be attracted to the women and flirt with the women, and the women will flirt back to try to get you in.
That
So
boosts your
it's
testosterone levels right there, Steve.
yeah. So here's what happens though with this. These are corrupt businessmen who are running these anti-aging clinics, right? They're not doctors. And I saw the businessman there. He comes out and he's got all this jewelry on. He looks like he's a pimp, you know? And he's this businessman with this slick, he's got the slick hair, just completely sleazeball, right? it's the complete stereotype you would see of the gym, as you said, Mobster, the gym, the car dealership
Yeah,
general manager, the slick back hair, the jewelry, the fancy belt, and
it's
all this stuff.
literally salesmanship
Yeah.
101. I can see you're interested in health. I can see you might need a bit of a pickup. Come on in. I'm sure we can do you a deal today on
So
testosterone.
so what they want to do on this situation is they don't want to just put you on regular TRT. Regular TRT is like 90, maybe 100, maybe 125 milligrams a week of TRT. They want to
Yeah.
put you on sports TRT. And why do they want to do that? Because they want you to go have two, three times the amount of testosterone in your body so that you feel like you're on cloud nine,
Oh, please. Yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
tell your friends about it, and then your friends want to come in. So of course they want to put you on more and more and more and more. They're not worried about your long-term health or your long-term health safety. So sports TRT would be somewhere between 250 and 350 milligrams a week of testosterone, and that's what
Mm.
they would try to put you on. Go ahead, Monster.
Yeah. I mean, look, the whole cross selling thing, when it comes to health and sports and supplements and whatever else, clinics like this have existed for 50 or 100 years, Steve. And I 100% agree with Steve. It's becoming more easy here in the UK. It's very hard for you to get your local GP, your MD, to get you within the NHS because the NHS really doesn't see it as a thing. So privately, yes, absolutely no problem whatsoever. If you don't mind paying, I mean, look, the reality of the situation is these people have to pay their bills. But as Steve said, they've seen it as a commercial opportunity and they are playing to some small degree on your insecurities. They will cross sell. Hey, why don't you buy a vitamin shot? We're doing a special on those this month. When you get your regular TRT, they'll get you to come in multiple times per year and so on. We've talked about this indirectly on other shows, Steve, when we said, look, the simple fact of the matter was it used to be, and I suspect the prices are slightly better now. Just a few years ago, when we first started doing these kind of shows, Steve, I believe the average was $200 per month for, as Steve said, the equivalent of 90 to 120 milligrams a week. The reality is that we we use the sources that we talk about on the forums. I think I worked it out, Steve, to be the equivalent of in here in the UK. I'm talking about what I could go to a gym and buy over the counter, not via a source, not through the mail, etc., but what I could buy in a gym, improperly, shall we say, was the equivalent of a cup of coffee per week. And if you multiply that, that's 4 cups of coffee. Call it 5 cups of coffee a month. Let me say that, Steve. I'm going to call that about $20, $25, the equivalent in pounds into dollars, versus $200 or £160, a little bit less at the minute. So $146, £146 for $200, what the clinic would charge you, and so on. So you start to see it for what it is. The vitamin shots, how much does it cost to buy vitamins and put them in solutions, Steve? Yeah. The only value that I would give to the clinics, and I'm not saying don't use the clinic. If that's your disposable income, that's the way you want to go ahead. So the value that I would give to that is that a proper clinic should give you regular blood checks. They should look at what the sports TRT or the TRT is doing to your system, to your bloods. Is it changing your lipids? Are there some healthy markers that are positive? Are there some markers that are negative, and so on and so forth? This is why we talked about an endocrinologist at the beginning that Steve mentioned, and so on and so forth. They should be looking at the effects of what the testosterone therapy is doing to your body. Does it need to change? Have your numbers changed? Do you need more than you previously did? And so on. Something which is important, and I'll definitely touch on this now, Steve, or should I say, expand on a comment I made earlier on. It should be understood, and Steve's already said it to some degree, that it will change. We talked about your actual testosterone levels as you age. It's the reason why 98-year-old men aren't running around as a complete and utter lunatics chasing skirt and trying to make babies. They're not climbing mountains, again, with the odd one or two exceptions. They're not breaking world records in strength. And that's literally part of the aging process. So that's understood. Your health, vis-a-vis the amount of body fat you carry, medical conditions that you might have, lack of health through a lack of exercise, poor diets, all these things. And we've talked about this specifically on other shows, which I advise you to go and listen to when we talked about testosterone replacement, boosting, and products which will help boost your levels naturally. And even things like not using a testosterone booster when all things are equal. So, for example, a typical listener will just show is relatively young, probably between 18 and 30, should be going to the gym for the most part, should be doing other forms of exercise, especially the younger ones, jogging, rowing, playing tennis, playing badminton, playing squash, playing touch ball, whatever, and should be eating healthily. We've talked about the effects of diet and so on and so forth. So make sure that you are aware that those other things will help you. And even if you take a form of testosterone therapy or replacement therapy, having a better diet, being conditioned, going to the gym, and even things, and this actually one of the advantages of testosterone therapy, a better outlook on life can, in and of itself, help boost your levels slightly. One of the things that's important, and the reasons why you will see variations, and again, this is actually an argument for sports TRT, and Steve said that with regards to the clinic and the perception of having a higher level given to you as a dose, is that the way that one individual will compare to another individual will respond to the same amount differs. And so, for example, one of the things, even with the lower levels of testosterone replacement that have been given to people in the past, is for some individuals, it can be transformative. I mean, literally, I feel low, I've got brain fog, my lifts in the gym haven't changed for ages. I think I'm eating healthily. I'm trying to exercise as much as I can. My wife nagged me, etc., etc. Lo and behold, they get their testosterone levels checked, and they're given testosterone, and they come back within weeks or months, like Steve was referring to earlier, when they talk to their buddies. I feel fucking great. Me and the wife have had sex 3 times this week. Used to be once a fucking month. We're redecorating the house. I've taken it alone. I'm thinking of getting myself a sports car.
Maybe once a year in some
Yeah,
situations.
some. I mean, the thing of it is, and I even talked about this, ironically, when we talked about salesmen earlier on, salesmen would go on TRT because they started to push their sales again. Politicians became something where they were doing it. Actors, especially, to stay young for the movies. So for some people, and I mean, look, just before my 60th birthday, now I've cycled, as Steve knows and the regular listeners know, in the past, starting the age 37 till now, at the age of 60, as we do this show. And I held off to just before my 60th birthday to go on TRT, which means, of course, for life in my case. And typical proper TRT is, or should be, for life. It's not something you can hop on and in a few years come back and hop off. You'll be doing it years at a time. This will fuck with your natural levels. That's kind of obvious. I didn't think that 200 milligrams, which is what I'm doing, would make that much of a difference to me. I thought my libido was reasonably healthy. I felt okay in and of myself, Steve. But I thought, no, it's about time. I'm nearly 60. I like to keep pushing it in the gym. Let's go on TRT. I can afford it. I can get the products, no problem. I use some of our approved sources for products. 200 milligrams. Within a week, my libido picked up. Not stupidly, not drastically, but enough that it was noticeable. My sense of well-being and energy picked up. Again, 5-10%. Not crazy. I didn't suddenly start double benching or triple bench squatting or whatever I was doing before. I wasn't running around chasing skirt, but I noticed the difference. It felt like knocking 5 years off my age as an absolute minimum. And that's just at 200 milligrams. So the argument, and let's go into sports TRT specifically from my point of view, is activity. So if TRT can be given to anybody with low testosterone levels and acts arguably as a tonic or pick you up or revitalization, then sports TRT is for those of you that do engage in various sports. You might want to win your squash games with a buddy. You might play touch basketball or whatever at the weekend, one-on-one. And you might think to yourself, I want to be better at playing that game. I want to be better in the gym. I want a better response. I want that little bit more of a pickup. So the 90 to 120 goes to 200, and the 200 suddenly starts to creep to the 250 and 300. And I would argue again, Steve, that in actual TRT given to you by a clinic, the 300 milligrams is very rare. It's less than 1%, and it's typically given to those that are very poor responders and have very low levels to begin with. Most people are in that 90 to 120 milligram range. So when you start to see regular Joes that perhaps are literally playing these sports for pleasure, starting to creep to the 250 to 300 milligrams, it's got to be because people have become comfortable with it and they really want an edge. They might be playing games where they're having a $5 or $10 bet with a buddy, and they want to be seen, I think, amongst their peers, and specifically the older gentlemen rather than younger gentlemen. I would argue, Steve, it's very much a case they want to be top dog. They don't necessarily want to be a Mr. Olympia or super muscular or whatever else, but they want to be that guy, that alpha, call it whatever, the type 1 personality. And maybe they've noticed that dropping off a little bit. So this is why we start to see the 250 to 300 milligrams. So what do you think on that before we talk about bodybuilding, CRT, and so on?
Yeah, and the bottom line is when you're on Sports TRT, you got the ability to feel like Superman. You got the ability to have more strength, more muscle, very strong libido, at least in the initial term. And because you're gonna be, you know, putting an exogenous 2 or 3 times the amount of exogenous hormones into your body, which is going to cause your testosterone levels, obviously, and your hormone levels, and your androgenic levels in your body to skyrocket. So you're going to feel 2 or 3 times more of that in your system than you've ever felt in your life. So you'll feel like the way you felt when you were a teenager and more, so and it's you'll see the effect even more if you had initially low testosterone levels. But the downside is, what is the risk? And if you get your blood work done, you'll see your hematocrit levels, your red blood cell count goes up, your blood thickens, it opens you up for issues with the heart, it opens you up for more stressed kidneys, more stressed liver, and more inflammation in the body. So it can open you up for a lot of risks. So it's not a healthy option long term to do sports TRT, but it is an option for a lot of you out there who are looking just to feel that on
Yeah,
feeling year
yeah,
round. So the people are doing it, and we're going to talk about it if people are doing it. Am I recommending you do sports TRT? No.
no.
But I had a client, he's only on 125 milligrams of testosterone a week. He got his blood work back. His red blood cell count was above range and his hematocrit was above range. So I told him, I was like, look, you're opening yourself for heart attacks or blood clots just on 125 milligrams a week. So imagine doing sports TRT, which is double or triple that amount. And that is a risk. 200 milligrams a week of testosterone over the long term is going to take time off your life. That's just how it is. So if you're going to do the sports TRT option, keep that in mind, and you have to take personal responsibility for it.
Very quickly, Steve, I think I'll get you to talk about this as well. Talk about donating blood, which helps a little bit. And also, I'll say now, and I mentioned it earlier on, guys, how being on a better diet and a better lifestyle actually helps with natural levels. Being on
Yes.
sport TRT arguably is a reason to improve your diet because of those potential side risks. But talk about specifically, Steve, donating blood as a way of helping.
Yeah, so you should be donating blood every chance you get. When you go donate blood, get make sure you donate the red cell, I believe it's called. So I go in the type I donate, I believe it's called red cell donation. So I can only do that twice a year. There's other types of blood donation where you donate whole blood, where you can do it like every 6 or 8 weeks. So there's different organizations that you can go donate blood to. There's also a way for your doctor to write you a prescription that will send you to a different clinic where they will actually draw a
Yep.
pint or two of blood out of you, and then they'll just dispose of the blood or whatnot, or do whatever they want the blood. So just to get it out of your system. So that would be an option for you to go. But let's get into bodybuilding
Yeah, sorry,
TRT.
just before we finish, Steve, I
Yeah.
just thought of something which is actually great. I think we've mentioned this on a previous show. Donating blood is good for you in that particular way. It's also arguably good for your community. And something they started doing here in the UK, and I believe you get this in the States, is that you get a message sent to your phone saying that your blood's been used for an operation or helping a person to recover from a medical condition and so on and so forth. Our local, just to finish on this point, our local former IPB pro I believe, is up to 27 donations, and readily promotes this. Retired, but readily promotes the idea of donating blood, and has literally posted one of the screenshots from the NHS saying, "Thank you so much for your donation. It's recently been used at this hospital, and
Yeah.
it's helping the community." So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so the
fantastic.
one, yeah, I go through what's called One Blood, and the nice thing about it, they do the same thing. You'll donate the blood, and then you can check back like in a week or two, and they'll actually post what they used your blood for. So they'll tell you they used it at this hospital or for at this place, and
Yeah,
so it's really
awesome.
cool. And
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that people are using your blood, and it does not affect you in a negative way. They always say when you go there, oh, you shouldn't do anything the rest of the day, no activity. Yeah, I will work out after I go donate. Look, we're the strongest, supposedly, right? According to a lot of bodybuilders, we're supposed to be the strongest and the most fit people in our community. So we can go donate blood and then still go work out the same fucking day.
Something I didn't
Not gonna
realise,
make a
Stephen.
difference. So
I
don't
actually
worry about
double
that
checked.
bullshit.
I saw something the other day, and this is just
I've done it.
something else for you guys, you big muscular gentlemen and ladies that are listening to this show. I thought that everybody, including myself, had 7 to 8 pints of blood. No, no, that's a small person. Apparently, Steve, someone my body weight or more can have a great deal more than 7 or 8 pints. I think if it was 7 or 8 pints and they pulled a pint, and then we went and worked out, we might struggle. But the reality is we are bigger, we're more muscular, we're carrying more, and therefore I might have something stupid, Steve, like 20 plus pints of blood. I have to look this back up, and I encourage listeners to do so. If you're 200, 300, 400 pounds, powerlifting, strength athlete, whatever else, and even someone who's obese at that size, you've got way more than 7 or 8 pints. So the idea that somehow I would feel faint when I've got so many pints to spare is incredibly unlikely. Yes, I mean, again, we even if we have the hardest hardcore workouts, we'd have to be carrying someone up a mountain on our back, Steve, with no hydration after donating blood to struggle in reality versus the 7 or 8 pinter losing a pint, losing 1/7 or 1/8 of their blood supply. That's a bit different. But for the most part, worst case
Yeah.
scenario, just do it on one of your rest days and you'll be fine the next day. It's not as
Yeah.
bad as people make
I
out. That's
go
also, yeah,
Yeah, I'm fasting. I'll go fasted and I'll do it. Like, and then I'll go work out. And the lady there is like, "Oh, you haven't eaten anything all day?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like this obese woman who has like a bag of like fast food. And she's like, "I
yeah.
can't believe this." I'm like, "Ma'am, I've
How
been
the hell
coming.
did
I've been
humanity survived?
I'm
Yeah,
like, ma'am, I've been coming here and donating. It's like 20 times I've come here, and I've always fast, and I go work out after, and I do
yeah,
cardio, and I'm alive. All
yeah,
right. So, and then that usually shuts her up pretty quick.
yeah,
But like, look, at the end of the day, don't be a wuss or don't be a pussy, as Body
yes. You'll
Monster
be
says on the
fine.
forum. Go donate the blood. If fucking you just sit in a fucking chair and they take the blood out of you, and then you're good to go for the day. So, let's get into bodybuilding TRT 101.
Yes.
In bodybuilding TRT, well, I'm gonna let you talk about this, Mobster. Don't worry.
Yeah,
But let me kind
yeah,
of get
yeah.
a word in and kind of, if you don't mind. So
Yeah,
let me.
yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
let me tell you this. Okay. So bodybuilding TRT, it's going to be even a higher dose than sports TRT. It's going to be 350 to 400 milligrams or more. And it was said that Rich Piana would cruise on this type of TRT year round, and he would do an even higher dose at 1,000 milligrams a week sometimes. And it wouldn't surprise me if he was even on more than that. So is it safe? No, it isn't. And it's just like running an actual steroid cycle and just staying on for the whole year because it's going to cause a lot of your blood markers to be off and your lipids are
Yes.
going to be very out of whack. So the flip side is it's going to allow people like this, people like Rich Piana, who passed away, by the way, because it's going to allow them to maintain their size and their
Yep.
strength year round and help them continue to improve in almost a linear fashion with no pullback at all to satisfy their bigorexia. So they have this mental issue where they want bigger exia, bigger. They want to get bigger. They want to always get bigger. They got to stay bigger. They got to get bigger. If they lose even a millimeter off their arm or they lose like 5 pounds off their bench press, they will flip out. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what's wrong with me? I got to run more steroids. So this is bodybuilding TRT 101. The other people who do do the bodybuilding TRT is professionals who are in
Yeah.
a live competing environment where they're doing competitions throughout the year. they'll stay on this bodybuilding TRT when they're off their quote unquote cycle, even though this
Yeah.
is considered a cycle, but they're not even cycling. So don't even use
They
that
even
word.
call it supplementing, Steve, when they
They're just
really mean steroiding.
they're just staying on, and this is their
Yes.
baseline, is this bodybuilding TRT level. That's their baseline, and then they'll run 2, 3, 4, 5 grams of steroids to really jack up the dose, and that would be their cycle. So is this healthy? Of course not. If sports
No.
TRT isn't healthy, then imagine this. So expect to take many, many years off your life. A lot of these bodybuilders end up on dialysis because they really strain the shit out of their kidneys. It's like taking a sponge and using the sponge over and over and over and over. Eventually, that sponge is going to fall apart. Same thing with your kidneys. When you run steroids nonstop and then you run bodybuilding TRT nonstop as a base, your sponge, which is your kidney, is going to fall apart. And then once you get into your 50s or 60s, your kidney won't be functioning anymore. You'll need to go on dialysis, which,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, is kind of like being on probation after you get out of jail. It sucks. It really sucks because with dialysis you got to go in 2, 3, 4 times a week to a facility and sit there
Yes.
for hours and let
Hours.
the machine do what the kidney was going to do. And it really sucks. A lot of people just turn it down. They're like, I don't want to do it, and then they're dead within a week or two because their kidney isn't functioning. So
Yeah, I don't
go
think
ahead, go ahead.
most people think far ahead enough in this particular regard. I mean, the whole cruising bodybuilding TRT thing is something that I'm anti, and I say this constantly on the forums. It starts with you gain muscle, and you like the muscle that you've gained. You got stronger, you got more muscular, you look more hench. You like the confidence you have when you see what you see in the mirror. You come off cycle, and it is perfectly natural between cycles, following a PCT, following time off, to lose some, but not all of the muscle. And I've touched on this in other shows, and I've even got a thread on Evolutionary about keeping some of your gains. My tips thread, if you look for it, talks about manipulating diet and training to maintain as much of your gains as possible. What some people do is they go back to how they was before, Steve, and I quote, I lose all my gains. And that basically fucks with them mentally. Never mind how you feel when you're on testosterone or even high natural levels. It fucks. I can't see the muscle that I had. My arms just got smaller. My shirt's got looser. I'm not getting as much skirt as I was before. And it's really a more of a mental fact than it is almost a physical one. And so then it becomes well, I've got to stay on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blast and cruise. So the lower end of the bodybuilding TRT is arguably, as Steve said, a cycle. 300 to 400 milligrams a week is, in my mind, Steve, is a cycle. It's just a low dose cycle. But you're on this in between actual, in your mind, if you go down this particular road, this isn't a cycle. This is just me maintaining the muscle I've got. Now, for the professional, and I've talked about this on another show recently, I said, look, there's a risk versus reward. If my physique makes me a six double figure, say $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year, but let's just say six figure, $100,000 a year versus the average $60,000 to $70,000 a year, whatever it is in the States, Steve, then arguably the way that I look and the way I'm perceived to look is tied in with my TRT use, my cruising use. And that's my career. In the same way that certain other people, whether it's playing golf or flying a plane or whatever else, need to put in a certain amount of practice in order to be able to earn a living and have a skill set that enables them to perform it and do the things that they do as a bodybuilder, as someone who's on TRT or cruising. My physique is tied in with how I look, the amount I make, and all those kind of things. So the risk versus reward is different. But for most people, it comes down to, quote unquote, not wanting to lose their gains, or quite simply, Steve, and we mentioned this in terms of the effect it has on some people, just how goddamn fucking awesome they feel. And again, this varies from individual to individual. I have seen people literally, I've used this person as an example, and it's not a secret in terms of me saying what he's done, but literally pinning testosterone just to go to the gym. A single meal, 100, 200, 300 milligrams, just to go to the gym. To the point where his young boy said, and I quote, "You're pin happy, Dad." I have other conversations, and it's a little bit of the bullshit you get with gym bros, where they're talking in terms of milliliters, which is the volume of fluid, I'm on 24 mil when I'm on cycle. I'm on 25 mil when I'm on cycle. Almost like a badge of honor. The reality of the situation is, as Steve quite probably said earlier on, there are effects on health, specifically long term. We've done whole shows specifically on fertility. I've just talked about how you can retain as much of your gains as possible between cycles without needing to stay on, and so on. And I think it's just an easier option, and they won't consider the long-term effects in terms of health issues. They won't consider at the time the long-term effects on fertility. And again, if it's a younger person, we're talking about under 35 who might have a kid in the future but doesn't think like that now, the effects on your fertility in the future will be something you will kick yourself in the ass for, because we told you, you listen to this show, you've seen our advice online, and you decide to ignore it. And what you also see sometimes with that, Steve, is we'll give out this advice, we'll see posts like this on a forum, and when it eventually happens that what we said come true, they disappear. They look back there saying, you know, guys, I wish I fucking listened to you. I wish I'd taken your advice. And the reality of the situation is, and I say this as someone who's 60 odd years of age, is that how you think, how you feel, your health, your body condition, different things in life will change as you move through. And what seems to be super important in terms of being a big, massive, muscular motherfucker, strong as a fucking bull, and I love that shit myself, Steve, as you said, those priorities change. You might start to focus on family and kids and career, and things move, and being super muscular, etc., isn't as important. It might even be that you're chasing a pro card and you cannot afford to lose a single pound or a quarter of an inch or whatever else. And getting that pro card, even if it doesn't make you a professional bodybuilder earning six figures, becomes a thing in and of itself, being successful in that particular way. So make sure that you understand the risk, etc., when you decide to make the choice. It is, of course, Steve, got to say this, something you can do. It's your fucking body.
Yeah, and one of the strategies you can do if you wanted to do sports TRT or bodybuilding TRT is come off at some point. Say you know what, I'm going to do this for a year, and then you say you know what, I'm going to come off for a certain amount of time, or at least drop it down to a normal TRT level, just to make sure you get your blood thinned out. Just donating blood is not going to be enough if you continue to abuse your body over time. So again, as Monster said, it's your body. We're educating you. Do I advocate sports TRT or bodybuilding TRT? I do not. If you're a client of mine, you come to me, you're like, Steve, I want TRT. I'm never going to put you on these. So, and if you insist on doing it, then I'll be like, okay, but here are the risks. I'm going to be upfront and honest with you. So keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, look, it's chemical warfare out there. And a lot of you are competing. You might be competing with guys at your gym. You may be competing with your group of friends. You may be competing to win a fucking trophy or go on stage and at a competition and win. Or you might be like Mobster and you compete in powerlifting, and the guy you're competing against is running bodybuilding TRT or sports TRT, and you're like, man, I got to keep up with him. So at the end of the day, you've got to make the decision on what's right. Just be aware of the risks, and be aware that it's not a conspiracy that a lot of these anti-aging clinics are going to start getting in trouble, with different entities, because they're not doing this in an ethical way, and they're not warning their clients of the risks of putting them on this amount of TRT. So you got to be aware of that. The risk, it's right there in black and white with the blood work. I've seen thousands of blood work over the years. It's right there in black and white. So get your blood work done. And if things are extremely severe with your blood work, you've got to think about, hey, it's time for me to come off. I had a good run. It's time for me to come off. A lot of bodybuilders or athletes, they'll wait for a big injury, a physical injury, to finally take their foot off the gas. But they don't pay attention to their blood work enough. You don't see bodybuilders say, you know what, I'm retiring early because my blood work doesn't look good. They're not going to say that. They'll say, yeah, I'm retiring early because I want to spend time with my family. I want to retire early because I have a tore my shoulder or I tore my pec or something like that. So you'll never see that, because that's not considered, as Mastro says, it's not considered masculine to say stuff like that. We don't want to admit what's going on in our body is not doing us any good.
I used the analogy, Steve, just before we move on, of the sports car analogy multiple times. We imagine that because we're muscular, strong because we work out. If we were a car, we're not a family SUV. we're a little bit more, we're either a 4x4 climbing up the side of a mountain, Steve, or we're a sports car. That's the kind of way that we want to feel. And we're having turbos and injection, fuel injection, and God knows what. And the analogy here that kind of works is that we're revving the engine a little bit more. We're driving a bit faster, we're braking quicker, and so on and so forth. And over time, if this was a normal car, we'd wear it out. We'd fuck the brakes, the engine would overheat, and so on and so forth. And for the most part, that's kind of what you're doing. When you go to the higher end, and this is your baseline level, i.e. Sports TRT, Bodybuilding TRT, you are arguably revving the engine more. If it was a car, you'd worry about the oil. When it comes to our bloods, we look at the good and bad cholesterol. And if the bad cholesterol numbers are creeping up, as Steve said, if your red blood cell is creeping up, your body doesn't want to be revved. It doesn't want to be rushed. It doesn't want to be raced. And it's not just a now and again thing, because that's actually kind of good. It's all the time. Like, you park the car, Steve, you're in the house, and the fucking thing's still outside revving. That's your heart, that's your blood, that's the other organs in your body constantly being ever so slightly stressed, more than it normally would be, because you're pushing the high levels of testosterone. So you need to understand. I'm not saying you can't. It's your body. These are your choices, your desire to be muscular, etc., etc. It's up to you how much testosterone placement you're going to use, but you must understand what you're doing to your body and the potential effects that there are. What about, Steve, as we move on now, in terms of actual choices?
Yeah.
Because I've got to say, Steve, Euro Pharmacies does have some great... Well, let me start this as well, actually, and I'll bring Steve in on this particular
point. Ahead.
So there are obvious choices, specifically that are used by testosterone replacement clinics. But something Steve and I discussed on another show was, why do we specifically pick these? And there's a reason for that. But the reality is, you can probably use any goddamn muscular anabolic steroid, call it what you like, as a form of testosterone replacement. But there are reasons why we recommend them. So talk a little bit about that kind of choice and the reason why we make those choices before we talk about the actual products they have.
Yeah, so in this podcast, we're going to specifically focus on testosterone itself as an exogenous hormone. But yes, you can do HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and use other things, including growth hormone and some of these other steroids as well. But in this one, let's just stick to the testosterone options that Euro Pharma has. So the top two most popular in America and really worldwide is going to be testosterone cypionate and testosterone enanthate. And why is that? We've done polls, not we, but other people have done polls where they've polled steroid users and asked them, what are your favorite steroids? What are the most steroids, types of steroids they use? And testosterone CYP and testosterone E, even though they were two different choices, came in first and second. Yeah. There's a few reasons for that. Number one, it's cheap. Okay, you can get a vial of Euro Pharma testosterone. It's going to cost you less than it would cost you to go get your car professionally washed at like a nice car wash place. Yep. Number two, the injections are smooth. So when you inject it, you're unless you're extremely severely allergic to gear, you should end up with very, very little to no post-injection pain. And then number three, you only have to inject it once or twice a week. Cypionate once a week. Yes. Enanthate maybe twice a week, maybe every 5-6 days at the most. But either way, it's good. Even with cypionate, you can inject it once every 10 days, once every 2 weeks even.
Yeah.
So if you're doing sports TRT or bodybuilding TRT, you want to take something where you don't have to inject it very often, because it's going to be in your system a longer period of time, and you're going to be on it a long period of time. So that would be an option you could go. The other one is...
What about something, just to interrupt again, Steve, micro dosing? I want to pass a comment on this as well. There are some users, some individuals, and we've seen these multiple times come up on the forums. I probably think about once a month someone says about micro dosing. So there's a couple of thought processes here. So very quickly, number one is microdosing is essentially a very small amount, 1/4 mil, 1/2 mil, sometimes even dilute product. So you look at it again, probably going back to the 100 milligrams, and then they'll do that on a daily basis. So 50 milligrams every day, Steve, or whatever, or the equivalent. So cutting down from, say, for example, 30 milligrams daily instead of 150, 200 milligrams a week, that kind of vibe. And the idea is in their particular mindset, and I've seen possibly one study that supported it. I haven't seen anything else. It was presented on request, and I said, "Why do you do it?" The thought process is a leveling, so a constant state of testosterone in the body. I've actually pointed out that's not how it naturally occurs. You literally get variations in your testosterone levels through the day, and you can still maintain health and be a bodybuilder, a weightlifter, etc. As I said, there's literally one study that I can see that supports that. I think the other thing is also if they are very receptive to amounts of testosterone and how it affects their mood, the idea that they can feel fairly level in terms of their mood through the day, through the week, etc., appeals to them. In reality, for example, when clinics used to do this, but they've actually slightly more frequent now, it used to be once a month or once every 20 days, every 3 weeks, and so on and so forth. So, the beginning, shortly after you'd had the injection, within a day or two, you start, oh, I feel great. You're feeling the effects. And 20 something days later, there's a drop off. So the idea of steady state, micro dosing, these kind of thoughts and processes, they're out there again for the cypionate and enanthate. You could do, as Steve said, as long as once a fortnight and so on and so forth. And there might be a small, but it's only going to be noticeable by a few, might be a small drop off at the end of the 14-week period. It shouldn't be that dramatic. You shouldn't suddenly go from super virile alpha male to pussy whipped church mouse. So it shouldn't be too dramatic. But for some people, they do seem to be more susceptible to the sensations of feeling down, etc., when the testosterone levels drop. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I've yet to see anybody that's using it at bodybuilding levels having better results via virtue of daily low dose injections.
Yeah.
They're not getting results. They're not adding more muscle. They're not being stronger than anybody else because they're microdosing. So
Yeah, we can talk about that in the future. Let's move on, buddy, and let's finish this out. Let's talk about Sustanon a little bit. And Sustanon is not popular in the US, but it is popular in Europe, especially for TRT. And you can, Sustanon is basically 4 different esters, mostly long esters, and you can inject Sustanon at a higher dose more infrequently. So you're going to inject it at a higher dose more infrequently every 1 to 3 weeks, which makes it very easy for some people to go down that way. Now, one of the things about Sustanon that I don't like is that number one, it can give you post injection pain. So that's one of the things I don't like about it. And so you'll inject it, and you might feel like some redness in the area. You might feel some swelling or that stuff. So I don't like it for that reason. So that's something to think about. But it is popular in Europe. Another one that Euro Pharma has is testosterone undecanoate, and this requires an injection every 3 to 6 weeks or more in some situations. So as Mobster was kind of giving the point about micro dosing, this is the opposite. This is a situation where you dose a larger amount, even more than than Sustanon, but a very, very infrequently. And this is also known as Nebido by a lot of people. And you see this prescribed by some doctors in America, not many, because you lose the flexibility when you do this. But if you do want to stay on for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you're like committed to it, this would be a good option because this ester, this U ester, really has a slow release. So you inject it and it's not going to peak in your body for a long time. So you have to keep injecting it over the course of the next month, then inject it again in a month, then inject it again in a month. In some cases, you can inject it once every 2 months or longer. So it's got an extremely long half-life, and it will be in your system throughout that time, but it's not going to peak in your system for a little while.
If you don't like frequent jabbing, Steve, if you haven't got comfortable with giving yourself an injection, this one is one for you.
If you had just do 1 or 2 big injections, like once a month or once every 6 weeks or something, then this would be the option. But it's very rare that it's used. Because a lot of people, as Mobster said, they really like the flexibility of injecting more often because it's like a psychological thing. It's like, and it's like a psychological.
I think there's even an argument here, Steve. Sorry again, is if you want to go on cycle, you still, we talk about half-life. The half-life is just ridiculous. If it's 5 times, Steve, and you're talking about once a month, then it won't be out of your system. Oh, sorry, it won't even get down to the half in your system for 5 fucking months. That is, and the idea that you want that flexibility if you want to go on cycle, if you want to
Yeah.
change gears through the year, for
Yeah.
example.
So if you change your mind, let's say you're like, if you change your mind, like I'm going to do sports TRT, and then you start
Yeah.
doing this, and then like 3 months later, you're like, oh, I changed my mind. Well, it's still going to be your system for a long time.
They
So
also do
you
things.
better make a choice, yeah, if you're going to do it or not.
Yeah, that's another reason for sure. They also do a specific TRT product, Test 400, which is actually 400 milligrams a milliliter. So I would probably only use half a mil, as I do now, in terms of my 200 milligrams a week. And that is literally a testosterone enanthate, 200 milligrams testosterone cypionate, 200 milligram combination. And I believe that's still available right there, Steve. They've got it also down as TRT 400. And that would be, it's a higher amount per milligram, which used to be an issue, and I'll touch on that as well. But again, it's one of, you could use half a mil of this for me, for example. So a very small amount to inject. And you've literally got the combination of the two most popular TRT steroids in the product, ready made for you. This is what we'll talk about this in a moment, why companies like Euro Pharmacies put these products together. There used to be an issue, I'll just finish on this. There used to be an issue with the idea of high dosing products causing post-injection pain. I haven't really seen that come up as an issue for ages because companies like Euro Pharmacies, and I'm going to go into the promotion now, Steve, have really started to look at the proper carriers, the oils that they use to make sure that there's less contaminants, etc., in products and so on and so forth. It was a thing a few years ago that you would regularly see people talk about post-injection pain. I think I've seen 1 or 2 posts on the forums in the last 12 months where that's an actual issue. And even for me, when I've talked about it, and we've actually said this to the person, when it's come up, sometimes it's just poor technique. The products across the industry have got better. And I would used to say that you shouldn't use 400 milligram, 500 milligram products. No, I don't do that anymore because it really isn't an issue. And look, when it comes to companies like Euro Pharmacies, why do we talk about Euro Pharmacies? Why do we recommend them? For products like this, literally producing, they understand that there is a market for testosterone replacement. They have other products that you can use, the full range of orals. They are constantly experimenting with the range that they have. Talk a little bit about your experience with Euro Pharmacies as well, Steve.
Yeah, and I've used Euro Pharma many times. I've had clients use them. We've had a lot of guys on the forum use them. Their testosterone is high quality. If you get the blood work done, you're going to see this for yourself. The nice thing about today versus 20 years ago, 30 years ago, now you can go get blood work done and you can test out these products. You could even have them shipped off and tested to see the
Yep.
quality, and people have done that. So the blood work doesn't lie, people lie. So what nice thing about Europharma, people have gotten the blood work done
Yep.
using 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams or 500 milligrams, and they've seen right there in black and white, you see the testosterone numbers that show it's dosed where it needs to be. It's not overdosed, which
No.
can be dangerous, and it's not underdosed, which is frustrating because you spend all this money and time
And they're
and
ripping you off. Yeah.
and yeah, you're getting ripped off by some of these brands. So you're a farm, you don't have to worry about that. They have excellent service, they have excellent shipping as well, and they're always going to make sure that you're taken care of.
I see companies, Steve, that will, and I'm not going to name one, but perfectly fine company, produce a solid product, and for whatever reason, every so often someone will come up with a complaint. Normally, it doesn't need to be made in the first place. I never see complaints about Euro Pharmacies. They've got one of probably, I would argue, is a model for what a rep should be for a company in the industry. And their customer service, like Steve said, is second to none. I've described how when they've had one of the things I like, I'll talk about this. One of the things I like is what I call honest lab results. What do I mean by that? It would be very easy to put up that a product containing 200 milligrams of various steroids contain 200 milligrams of various steroids. You can make something that's dead on point, send it off to be tested. The lab confirms it's dead on point. You can create a lab result for the screen and have it look like it's fantastic. What do I like? about Euro Pharmacies. They will regularly test their products. And as we said, outside, individual customers have done this themselves. And it will come back within 2 or 3 milligrams. But Steve's absolutely, it's 200, it might be 202 or 197. But it's honest. It's telling you this is the result that we got. We're not going to get it tested again until we get a result we like and then post that. And it means that and it's regular. They probably post more test results on their products via one of their resellers than any of the other companies that we talk about and discuss on this show. So for whatever reason, that's something Euro Pharmacies take specific pride in doing and putting together. So look, there's a reason why we talk about them. There's a reason why we recommend them. Steve and I have both personally used them. I've had great results. And as I said on many shows, they are my go-to. I've used other companies' products. I've had good success results and cycles with other companies' products. But my every single day go-to, my current TRT, etc., is Euro Pharmacies products. So that's the reason why we like them. Let us know what you think, guys. Talk about any questions that you might have for yourself. Raise these in the comments. Come onto the forums, post threads. Check out threads of people like myself that are using Euro Pharmacies products. Talk about TRT. Has it transformed your life? We want to know, and we want more feedback on the show so we can improve them on a daily basis. Don't forget to like, love, and subscribe like we talked about earlier. Please note, we are not doctors, and the opinions are ours. It's our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast of informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.